The mere mention of the name O.J. Simpson is enough to instantly evoke a myriad of emotions in the minds of millions of Americans, all because of his alleged involvement in his wife's case. Despite his fame and fortune as a legendary NFL player, the dark complexities of his personal life, which were shaped by notorious legal battles and public scrutiny, have left an indelible mark on his children, especially his daughter Sydney. Sydney's actions speak louder than words about what she thought of O.J., even though she has never publicly expressed her feelings for him. So, what will be revealed? What horrifying truths will be revealed about O.J.'s life, which has not faded with time, through the eyes of his children? Let's find out. O.J.'s first marriage. Simpson was taken into custody for the murders of his wife Nicole and Ron Goldman, who was Nicole's friend. O.J. tied the knot with Marguerite White, the woman he had loved since childhood. Even before O.J. became a big figure in the National Football League, the two college sweethearts had known one another since they were in high school. The couple had been together for an entire year before O.J. won his first important award, which was the Heisman Award in 1968. In addition to his successful career as an athlete, O.J. was also a successful actor. Even though Marguerite and O.J. were just 19 years old when they tied the knot, they remained married for more than 10 years. There were 3 children born to the union. Aaron was born in 1977, whereas Jason was born in 1970. Arnell was born in 1968. As is the case with every other marriage, O.J. and Marguerite encountered their fair share of difficulties in their marriage, which eventually led to their separation. Because of the decline in the quality of their marriage, the couple went through a brief period of separation. It is often believed that the dissolution of this marriage was associated with the hectic lifestyle that O.J. led. It was disclosed that the celebrity spent most of his time away from the residence that they shared due to the demanding nature of his work schedule. When his wife was in charge of their Brentwood house, he resided by himself in a magnificent home in the suburbs of Buffalo. In addition, the attorneys for the couple suggest another rational cause for the dissolution of their marriage. The attorneys asserted that an increase in O.J.'s celebrity led to a decline in the quality of their marriage. Nevertheless, during all of this drama, Marguerite made the astute decision to avoid the limelight, which was primarily influenced by the fact that she is an introvert. O.J. noted that even though his wife had a reserved demeanor, it was challenging for him to exclude her from his celebrity lifestyle. During his recounting, he mentioned that they were unable to go down the street without the crowd fawning over them with their recording cameras clicking. The pair ultimately separated in March 1979, and by June 1980, it was clear that their marital joy had entirely dissipated. It was supposedly said that Marguerite threatened to physically harm O.J. and notify the police over his unwillingness to quit their Brentwood property. This was the beginning of the end of the couple's marital bliss. Taking this perspective into consideration, it was abundantly evident that the pressures brought on by O.J.'s popularity played a part in the divorce procedures. However, the account of the dissolution of his first marriage would be lacking if it did not include the star's romance with Nicole Brown, which lasted for 2 years and eventually led to the conclusion that she would become his wife. O.J.'s second marriage. Over 2 full years before his most recent divorce, O.J. had his first interaction with Nicole. It was reported by the Los Angeles Times that Nicole, who was just 18 years old at the time, worked at the Daisy, a well-known nightclub that O.J. frequented regularly. It was said by Nicole's cousin that the relationship between these two individuals blossomed like wildfire, and even though O.J. was a significant amount older than Nicole, she did not appear to give a hoot about it. When Simpson made the request that Nicole stop attending school to move in with him, the nasty side of Simpson began to emerge. This occurred just a few months after the couple had begun dating. Both Justin, Ryan, and Sydney Brooke were born to the pair throughout their 7-year marriage, which began in 1985 and lasted until the couple gave birth to their children. During the early stages of their marriage, O.J. lavished his wife with public adulation, praising how she had enriched his life, particularly during the most vital period of his professional life. On the other hand, there were some unsettling indications that something was wrong with their marriage that was hidden under all of the glitz and glamour. One of the most visible manifestations of O.J.'s domineering nature was the fact that he had a difficult time simply avoiding his wife. During the time that Nicole was married to O.J., she was reportedly isolated from the rest of the world, according to her family and friends. Likely, the horrifying revelation that O.J. had physically abused his wife several times was easier to believe as a result of this disgusting circumstance. After O.J. was accused of assaulting Nicole, Nicole made it a routine to phone the police to report the incident. In one of these instances, Simpson allegedly cried out, "I don't want that woman sleeping in my bed anymore." This is according to the record that was produced by the police. Despite all of this chaos, former President John F. Kennedy was only arrested once, and during that detention, he successfully defended himself against allegations of domestic violence. Nicole continued to make these charges, even though her family allegedly encouraged her on several occasions to find a compromise in her marriage and to reconcile with her violent husband. This abuse, on the other hand, appeared to continue for a considerable amount of Chan. As a result of the financial benefit and assistance that Louis, Nicole's father, received from O.J., this imprudent action was promoted. On behalf of Louis, he made a lucrative investment, which increased the amount of money that the Brown family collected. Nicole also mentioned that the abuse she endured at the hands of her husband was a direct result of her confronting him about his relationships with other women. This was something that she had before mentioned. At the same time that he was allegedly informing his wife about his romances with Tawny Katine, it appeared as though O.J. was completely unconcerned by his adultery. This made the matter even more complicated. It was alleged that this romance continued for a whole year when Nicole was carrying his kid because she was pregnant with him. During the time that O.J. was still married to Nicole, there were also rumors that something shady took place between Kris Jenner and this individual. The documentary titled "Who Killed Nicole" was the source of this scandal's revelation. Within the confines of a jacuzzi, O.J. revealed that he and Jenner had engaged in some sort of activity. On the other hand, Jenner asserted in an interview from the year 213 that she had never been involved in an affair with O.J. O.J.'s malicious behavior was present for the entirety of his marriage, regardless of the circumstances above. Denise, Nicole's sister, testified that she was present during one of their fights. During her testimony, she described O.J.'s actions as extremely violent. She disclosed that O.J. initially went upstairs to retrieve his shirt and then returned downstairs in a rage to grab Nicole. He then threw her against the wall and finally threw her out of the house. Denise continued her statement by narrating that O.J. ordered that they both leave the house and, in fact, he removed her as well under his authority. During the incident, she recalled landing on her elbows as the other people in the room watched the horrific event occur. Later on, Nicole disclosed that after the event occurred once more, she immediately contacted 911 and yelled out that O.J. had cruelly hit her, inflicting significant injuries that required quick medical attention and hospitalization. The fierce face that Nicole's husband had when he was out of control was another thing that Nicole revealed. She observed that his eyes had a cold and animalistic appearance and that his veins were bulging out furiously. In her memory, Nicole recalled that it was a scary sight to witness. However, the pair agreed to fabricate the event that occurred at the X-ray facility by assuring the medical professionals that Nicole had fallen off of a bicycle. In the end, Nicole, who was exhausted and heartbroken, decided to put an end to everything. On the other hand, Nicole published an emotional letter to O.J. before the divorce, in which she detailed how she was accused of his adultery on several occasions and how she took the fall for it. Additionally, she recalled that she had forgiven him to the fullest extent that she was able to do so. On the 15th of October, 1992, the couple finalized their divorce and ended their marriage. As we continue with this movie, you will learn that the world was in full amazement if it was believed that this would be the conclusion to the tale involving Nicole Brown and O.J. Simpson, the death of Nicole Brown. Immediately following the conclusion of their marriage, Nicole began to take pleasure in her role as a single mother to her children, particularly when they had relocated into a house that they had rented. Through the money that she had obtained from the divorce, Nicole was able to establish herself financially and stand on her own 2 feet. She was awarded $433,750 in addition to the monthly child support payment of $10,000. Despite this, O.J. and Nicole made an effort to get back together at some point between the years 1992 and October 1993. The fact that there was obvious proof in Nicole's phone that OJ was still as violent as he had been in the past, and that he was much more angered by Nicole's new relationship status, contributed to the fact that it was safe to claim that it was an imprudent move. The overt manifestations of OJ's authoritarian personality, which had been present in the early days of their marriage, had gradually escalated into a full-blown pathology. It was disclosed by Kris Jenner that Nicole quickly understood that her life was in danger and that she needed to come out of her shell and be more outspoken about her position. She informed her close friends that OJ was quite capable of killing her and getting away with it, which he did. Kris Jenner did release this information. The circumstances that led up to her passing in 1993 began when the entire Simpson family went to see the premiere of Naked Gun 3-3-1-3. Before that, the couple took their children to see their friends Chris and Caitlin, as well as 4 of Chris's children. Despite this, Nicole had been covertly making preparations to sever all links with OJ by the time May 1994 rolled around. She had begun her hunt for a new home earlier that year, and she was reflecting on the moments of freedom that she would soon enjoy. As a result of their performance at the event, Nicole would remark things like, "I can do this," according to Jeans McKenna, who is her real estate agent. At around 8 o'clock in the evening, it was observed that OJ had placed a call to Nicole. It was at 9:40 that Nicole received a second call from her mother, who informed her daughter that she had inadvertently forgotten her glasses at the restaurant where they had eaten. An acquaintance of Nicole's named Ron Goldman, who worked at the restaurant, offered to drive them back to their house after the event. Some neighbors heard a dog barking on the evening of the 12th of June 1994 at about 10 o'clock, and they determined that the sound was certainly coming from Nicole's residence. This occurred on the same evening. In addition, the neighbors observed blood on the dog's feet and decided to take it home with them. The agitation of the dog, on the other hand, drew their attention, which prompted them to follow its movements and ultimately led them to the heartbreaking understanding that the worst possible thing had happened. Both Nicole and Ron Goldman had been murdered while her children were sleeping. Upon inspection, it was discovered that Nicole's head had been severed and Ron had received a nasty knife injury. Both fatalities occurred while the children were sleeping. Her grieving daughter, Sydney, left a message on the family's phone after everyone had been gone from the scene, hoping that the death of her mother was a hoax. However, the message was not a deception, and Nicole was laid to rest on the 16th of June, 1994. The arrest and trial of OJ. Because he had established an excellent track record of hostility and physical abuse throughout his life, OJ was quickly identified as the primary suspect in the stabbing killings of Goldman and Simpson's ex-wife soon after the incident. Immediately following the occurrence, it was alleged that OJ went into hiding as he remained hidden behind the wheel of the SUV that was driven by his friend A.C. Cowlings. It appears that he had the intention of avoiding surrendering to the authorities, particularly because he was aware of the allegations that were made against him. Keeping in mind that OJ was armed, the law enforcement agencies were required to engage in a high-speed pursuit of him for more than an hour. There were a total of 95 million people who saw this effort at evasion, which was shown live on national news network television. During the time that they were watching his arrest and subsequent transfer to police custody at his apartment in Brentwood, California, he garnered both fans and opponents. At the time of his arraignment, on the 22nd of July, 1994, Simpson entered a plea of not guilty in the courtroom. The lawsuit was postponed until the 24th of January, 1995, and Judge Lance Ito would be in charge of overseeing the proceedings. One of the pieces of evidence that was presented by the district attorney's office was the record of physical abuse that Brown had experienced before their divorce in the year 1992. They utilized Simpson's history of aggressive conduct as a significant motivation for the murder when they committed the crime. On the other hand, OJ was supported by the Dream Team, which included individual members like Azef, Lee Bailey, Robert Blazier, Sean Chapman Hawley, Robert Shapiro, Alan Dershowitz, and Robert Kardashian. OJ's most constant argument was that the evidence had been tampered with, particularly by their racist prosecution, which was led by Detective Mark Fuhrman, who claimed that he had discovered leather gloves coated in blood at the house of the accused. This was the most consistent defense in support of OJ. The Dream Team, on the other side, refuted the allegations and provided a rational explanation, stating that the glove had no possibility of belonging to O.J. since it was too small for his hands. In addition, they asserted in their defense that the evidence had been illegally put in O.J.'s apartment to frame him for the crime. During the trial, which turned into a public spectacle, two groups supported O.J. Simpson and another group opposed him. White Americans thought that O.J. was responsible for the murder, while the majority of African Americans thought that he was innocent. This caused America to be divided into two distinct groups. Because millions of people watched the trial until it was over, the important characters in the case became renowned about the same time as the case became famous. After a protracted trial that took place on the 2nd of October 1995, the jury arrived at a verdict. However, the judge, Ito, decided to delay the pronouncement until the next day, when he ruled O.J. Simpson not guilty of killing Ronald Goldman and Nicole Brown Simpson and instantly exonerated him of the charges against him. The African Americans praised the conclusion of the trial as a victory over the discriminatory system, while the whites were mostly dissatisfied. The feelings that were felt by the groups were a mixture of both positive and negative. On the other hand, once O.J. was introduced to Tawny Kitaen, the lady with whom he had an affair while he was married to Nicole, there were rumors that circulated about him. It was determined that Tawny Kitaen kept communication with O.J. Even after the stormy period between the marriage, and throughout that time, she stated that she possessed a crucial piece of information regarding Brown's murder, which she would only expose in her memoir. According to The Sun, O.J. had very well admitted to her that he had killed his wife and her friend. This information was obtained from the newspaper. The reason that Tawny chose to conceal this knowledge before to his passing is probably not very evident. However, Heaton, a journalist, stated to Sun that Tawny had just contacted him a few weeks before the occurrence of her death about this information. She said that individuals would rather have her dead than allow her memoir to be revealed to the public. Heaton's account was based on the fact that Tawny had given him this information. The news of Kitaen's passing, which occurred in March, was revealed by the Sunday. He was 59 years old. Despite the verdicts that were handed down in the trials, the relatives of the victims eventually filed a lawsuit against O.J. for the deaths of their children. O.J. Simpson was found guilty of the murders of Nicole Brown and Ronald Goldman by a civil court in the subsequent months, which was exactly 4 months after the beginning of the civil trial in October 1996. Goldman's father came out to sue Simpson for a sum of $96 million, even after O.J. had completed his sentence and been released from prison. Both families were given a total of $35 million in damages by the jury in the end. Even though O.J. had been in default of payments throughout the years and had filed for bankruptcy, Goldman's father asserted that O.J. had the financial means to transfer to Florida, a state that offered protection from bankruptcy. Although the Brown family made an effort to prevent the publication of O.J.'s book, they ultimately decided to settle for the rights to its publication as a means of repaying his obligation. However, the sum that was still owed was still significant, even after the earnings from the book were taken into account. Goldman said that throughout all these years, O.J. had only paid them a total of $13,000 at any point. Custody of O.J.'s children. Throughout the difficult time that O.J. was going through his trials, Brown's family took care of Justin and Sydney. After O.J. was found not guilty, they needed to split custody of their children. However, this did not occur without the Brown family putting up a fight. They had a difficult time relinquishing custody of their children, particularly after O.J. insisted that he be given complete custody of his children. Even though the altercation led to a court battle, the judge ultimately determined that Justin and Sydney should be sent back to live with their father in Brentwood to continue their education. Because it has been established throughout the years that custody of children is typically gained by the biological parents, the Browns' attempt to win custody of the children was going to be a Herculean undertaking. Their chances of success were extremely low. On the other hand, taking into account the idiosyncrasies of O.J.'s situation, it came as a surprise that the judge would allow O.J. to have full custody of his children. It was decided in his favor because, even though there was strong proof and facts that O.J. had assaulted his late wife, there was no indication that he had affected his children in this respect. Even though the court had decided in favor of O.J., the Browns continued to be adamant in their pursuit of custody of their child, and this battle extended for 5 years. When the appeal was finally heard, the court reached a consensus that the facts surrounding this murder could not be ignored. As a result, the court awarded guardianship to the Browns at the appellate court. However, this was not the end of the problem, as the children pleaded with the courts to let them continue to live with their father during the proceedings. A letter was written by the children to the justices on the appeals court, as reported by CBS News. In the letter, the children begged the judges to allow them to remain with their father. As a result of this, the Browns decided to withdraw their lawsuit, and as a result, they moved to Florida with their father. Despite this, the Browns family maintained contact with O.J., even though they had to put on a mask. Tanya Brown, Brown's sister, said that they had to treat O.J. with poise and decency at all times, regardless of the circumstances. This was because they had a growing affection for their grandkids. Sidney Simpson is the second daughter of O.J. Kennedy. The murder of Sidney's mother, Nicole, occurred while Sidney was just 8 years old, and her father was suspected of being the perpetrator of the crime. Even though the circumstances surrounding the occurrence are foggy, Sidney has a strong belief that her father was the one who was responsible for the murder of her mother. This sad tragedy made Sidney's life a living nightmare since she was forced to live in the shadow of her father over and over again. As you can guess, this made her life a living hell. She made an effort and took considerable measures to avoid the attention of the media, but unfortunately, she was not always successful in her objectives. It was in 2014 when she decided to alter her name to Portia to conceal her actual identity and lead a completely regular life. Changing her name was undoubtedly a symbolic gesture of building her own independent identity and separating herself from her father, even if it was not a spoken reaction to queries that were asked throughout the years. The pain of losing her mother at an early age and living in the shadow of her father would have surely had a significant psychological toll on Sidney. In addition, she would have been living alongside her father. There is also the possibility that Sidney has been able to shield herself emotionally by maintaining a low public presence. She can keep control over the telling of her tale by avoiding the spotlight, which allows her to resist having her story defined by the actions of her father. This is Arnell, O.J.'s firstborn daughter. According to the evidence, Arnell was also damaged emotionally and psychologically by the legal fights that her father was involved in. Sidney was also influenced by these struggles. Arnell, on the other hand, appears to have had a more favorable impression of her father in comparison to Sidney, since she was shown to have defended her father during his trials. Even though Arnell was extremely vocal about her father's innocence, it was shown that the two of them had disagreements over everything, particularly her way of life. It was discovered that Arnell lacked any sense of financial management, as evidenced by the fact that she was reckless with the mortgage payment that her father made in Florida. After her father awarded her custody of his money, she was likewise a reckless spender, as evidenced by the fact that she splurged money on different dresses and bags. It was reported by her close relatives that she became an alcoholic during this period. This was the primary reason for her frequent arguments with her father, who even attempted to marry her off to get her to leave his house. She bore the weight of the first child while she cared for her younger siblings, Justin and Sidney, and attempted to give them a normal existence following the trial. This was even though Arnell led a wild lifestyle. In addition, Arnell testified on her behalf at the individual's initial trial for the crime of murder. As a consequence of this, Arnell appeared as a witness for her father in the subsequent robbery trial that took place in 2008. She also appealed with the Parole Board of Commissioners to release her father from jail after he had served 9 years in prison. Arnell used these words to express her sentiments for her father during the parole hearing. She said that her father was like my closest friend and my rock all the time. In addition to this, she stressed the difficulties that she and her family had encountered as a result of these legal concerns and begged the general public to give them a second opportunity, even though she was aware that O.J. was feeling regret. Arnell's efforts to rebrand her life appeared to be overshadowed by the shadows cast by her father, even though she was working hard to get a better name. Her professional life has been hampered as a result of the trial, and at the moment, she can keep herself afloat by working as a fashion show producer in addition to being a rapper. In her spare time, she continues to work and manage the estate that her father left behind, in addition to being a strong advocate for her brother. There have been rumors or speculations that Jason Simpson was involved in the murder of Nicole. Having been born in 1970, Jason Simpson was the second child of Marguerite Simpson. He was there throughout the affair that took place between Nicole Brown and his father-in-law. As Jason was growing up, his family said that he had experienced several developmental and behavioral issues. They stated that he began misusing alcohol and hard drugs at the young age of 14, and the records revealed that he had attempted suicide on 2 separate occasions. Much before the sad deaths of his stepmother and her companion, it was known that Jason had mental health issues and, much more concerning, a criminal record. This information was made public. According to the documents that were kept by the police, they discovered that Jason had a lengthy history of aggressive conduct, which had resulted in his incarceration 4 times before the murder. The most infamous allegation against him was for assault, but he was also accused of driving under the influence of alcohol and using a license that had expired. The year of the murder, Jason had assaulted 2 of his girlfriends, and during one of those assaults, he came dangerously close to killing one of them. Additionally, he engaged in a conflict with his supervisor, during which he pulled out his kitchen knife and aggressively rushed at him. When these patterns were taken into consideration, it was reasonable to place the blame on OJ's son. This was because even though OJ had a history of physical violence, he was not adept with the drawing of a knife, in contrast to his son. Secondly, Jason has a disorder, an anger disorder to be specific, and because of this, he frequently had violent outbursts. He was often admitted at a mental health facility because of his blackouts and hallucinations. His doctor had stated that Jason was under the pills, and as such, he was able to curtail the triggers. However, in the months preceding the time of the murder, Jason had relapsed on his medication. Hence, it was also logical to consider that the death of Nicole Brown came as a result of the irrational behavior of her stepson, whom Nicole didn't tell she was going out to eat on the day of the murder. It was also found in Jason's belongings that he has a journal where he wrote down his violent thoughts and desire to harm anyone who came near his treasures. Further delving into the connection between the murder and Jason was the found physical evidence at the crime scene. It was discovered that the fibers on OJ did not match those of a black knit navy watch cap that was discovered at the scene. It was also noted that in his regular life, Jason was a solid fan of wearing a watch cap, and as coincidence will come into play, it shows that Jason was wearing the same cap in his photo from March 24, Itenjo by Joshasan, which was also found at the murder scene with his dog. However, the police failed to check the fingerprints of Jason as they solely focused on his father, whose prints were not found at the scene. The skin and blood samples also did not match the DNA of OJ. Furthermore, Ron Goldman was discovered to have damaged hands, which showed that he tried to wrestle with his assailant, but Jason was left unscathed because the Los Angeles police at that time did not consider him a major threat and suspect, so they never bothered to interview him. Another piece of evidence pointing to the fact that Jason may or may not have been the murderer was the blade they found in his closet. It was found out that Jason had a storage full of sharp items, including a knife that looked like a blade involved in the murder. Jason's knives came in different shapes and forms, as he had the Swiss and stiletto. During the examination of the knives, the forensic expert observed that the wounds on the victim's head were identical to the back of the blades. This led to the conclusion that the other pieces of equipment could not be used as evidence. Additionally, according to a classmate of Jason who attended the Army and Navy Academy and spoke with investigators, Jason had received specialized instruction on how to handle a knife proficiently. OJ, on the other hand, may have been a legendary abuser, but he was completely incapable of using a knife, and the mere sight of blood was enough to make him feel repulsed. During the brief period when the murder was taking place, it was also stated that Jason was there at the site. After 9:50 p.m., Jason was found to be on his own alone and had no one to rely on for an alibi, as stated by the Los Angeles Police Department. Additionally, Jason's sibling's mother had most likely never paid her a visit at her place of employment, which may have contributed to the strained relationship that currently exists between the two of them. In the aftermath of the murders and before his arrest, OJ had finally decided to retain the services of a well-known criminal defense attorney to defend his beloved kid. This approach was strange because the police were not hunting for Jason at that time. because they were unaware that he posed even a threat to their safety. Although his father was likely protecting him from the potential of being prosecuted if he was discovered, it is also possible that O.J. was attempting to rescue himself by pointing the finger of blame at his son, who may have been responsible for the crime as well. According to the well-known notion, the most effective first line of defense for a client who has been wrongly accused of murder is to cast the finger of blame at another individual who could be responsible for the crime. Now is the moment for you to articulate your perspectives on the age-old subject. Was it O.J. Simpson who committed the crime? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section below, and we appreciate you taking the time to watch. It is recommended that you hit the play button on the video that is now shown on your screen.